The night still lives in my chest, like a breath I never fully let out. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can hear the wind rushing past my ears and feel the cold panic grab hold of my thoughts. We didn't know that evening would be the last time we trusted our own child. We believed we were going for a simple drive, a family moment meant to heal old wounds. Instead, it became the moment everything broke. This is a story about family, about betrayal, and about the kind of fear that changes you forever. I am a mother. Before anything else, that is who I am. For years, my life revolved around my son, his laughter, his future, and the quiet dreams I had for him. I believed love could fix almost anything. I believed that blood meant safety. My husband believed it too. We were not perfect parents, but we tried. We worked hard, made sacrifices, and told ourselves that one day our son would understand everything we did was for him. That evening felt strangely calm. The sky was painted with fading light, and the road ahead looked peaceful. Our son sat behind us, quiet in a way that felt unusual, but not alarming. He said he wanted to talk, wanted us to listen. As parents, that was all we ever wanted from him. So we listened. We didn't notice how his words felt rehearsed, or how his eyes avoided ours in the mirror. We didn't notice how the car slowly moved farther away from familiar roads. As the air grew colder, my heart started to feel heavy. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling away. Mothers do that sometimes. We silence our instincts because we don't want to believe something bad could come from the person we love most. My husband reached for my hand, squeezing it gently, as if he felt the same unease. Still, neither of us spoke. When the car stopped, the silence became louder than any scream. The place was empty, the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts echo. Our son stepped out first and told us to follow him. His voice was flat, almost emotionless. I remember thinking he looked older in that moment, like a stranger wearing my child's face. The wind picked up, brushing past us, carrying a sense of danger I couldn't explain. We asked him what this was about. He didn't answer right away. He just stared ahead, toward the darkness. When he finally spoke, his words cut deeper than anything I had ever heard. Accusations. Anger. Things he had been holding inside for years. My husband tried to calm him, tried to reason with him the way a father does. I tried to step closer, to remind him I was still his mother. That was when everything happened too fast to stop. There was no long struggle, no dramatic warning. Just a sudden force and the sound of my own breath leaving my body. The world tilted, and in that instant, fear swallowed every other emotion. As we fell, time felt stretched, like it didn't want to move forward. I remember thinking, this can't be real. This cannot be how our story ends. In the middle of that terror, my husband's voice cut through the chaos. It was calm, almost unreal, as if he had already accepted something I couldn't yet understand. He whispered, "Pretend we're dead." Those words saved my life, though I didn't fully realize it then. They were quiet, desperate, and filled with a love that refused to let go, even in the face of betrayal. We lay still, hearts pounding so loud I was sure they could be heard. Every second felt like an hour. I wanted to cry, to scream his name, to ask why. But I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I played dead while my world shattered above me. Somewhere in the distance, footsteps faded, and the night swallowed everything whole. Lying there, I thought about all the moments that led to this point. The bedtime stories, the school mornings, the promises we made to protect him, and the trust we placed in him without question. I wondered when love turned into resentment, and how we missed the signs. Fear mixed with heartbreak, and the pain was heavier than the darkness around us. This is not just a story about survival. It is a story about how fragile family bonds can become when silence replaces honesty. It is about the terrifying truth that sometimes danger doesn't come from strangers, but from the people we hold closest. As parents, we never imagine our child as the villain in our story. We imagine ourselves protecting them from the world, not the other way around. As the night grew colder, one question repeated in my mind. Did he believe we were really gone? And if he did, what would he do next? I didn't know if help would come, or if we would have the strength to stand up again. All I knew was that surviving the fall was only the beginning. Because pretending to be dead is one thing. Living with the truth afterward is something else entirely. The ground beneath us was cold and uneven, pressing into my back as I lay still. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, loud and uneven, but I forced myself to slow my breathing. My husband's hand brushed against mine, barely a touch, just enough to let me know he was alive. That small contact grounded me. It reminded me that whatever this nightmare was, we were still in it together. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had lost all meaning. I kept listening for any sound that might tell me our son was still nearby. Every rustle of wind felt like footsteps. Every distant noise made my muscles tense. I was terrified that he would come back, that he would notice something, that our pretending wouldn't be enough. The fear wasn't just about dying anymore. It was about understanding why this had happened at all. As I lay there, memories crept in without permission. I saw my son as a little boy, running toward me with scraped knees and tears in his eyes. I remembered how he used to reach for my hand when crossing the street, trusting me completely. I remembered my husband teaching him how to ride a bike, running behind him, laughing when he finally found his balance. Those moments felt like they belonged to another life. Somewhere along the way, things had changed. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. There were small signs we brushed off as teenage mood swings or stress. He became distant. Conversations turned short and guarded. Doors closed more often. We told ourselves it was normal, that he would come back to us when he was ready. We didn't realize how deep the distance had grown. Money became a quiet tension in our home. My husband and I argued in whispers late at night, thinking our son couldn't hear us. We talked about bills, about expectations, about the future we wanted for him. We pushed him to do better, to aim higher, believing pressure meant care. We never asked how he felt under that weight. Looking back now, that silence feels heavier than anything else. Lying there in the dark, I wondered what version of us lived in his mind. Did he see us as parents who loved him, or as obstacles in his way? Had he been carrying anger for years, building it up until it found this terrifying release? The questions hurt more than the cold seeping into my bones. My husband shifted slightly, and I felt his fingers tighten around mine. He leaned closer, his voice barely more than air. He told me to stay calm, to stay quiet. His steadiness gave me strength, even though I knew he was just as scared as I was. We had been married for decades, faced challenges together, but nothing prepared us for this kind of fear. As we waited, I thought about trust. How easily we give it to the people we love. How we assume shared history means shared values. We trusted our son with our hearts, our lives, without hesitation. That trust now felt fragile, cracked, but not completely broken. Even after what he did, a part of me still hoped there was a reason, some misunderstanding, something we didn't see. The night stretched on, and the cold became harder to ignore. My body ached, but I didn't dare move. Survival meant patience. It meant believing that staying still was safer than trying to escape. I kept replaying my husband's words in my mind, holding onto them like a lifeline. Pretend we're dead. Those words echoed with a strange mix of fear and hope. Eventually, the silence changed. It wasn't sudden, but it was noticeable. The night felt emptier, as if whatever danger had been close was now farther away. Still, we didn't move. We couldn't risk it. Not yet. Every instinct told me to wait, to listen, to survive first and ask questions later. As the sky slowly began to lighten, my thoughts turned to what would happen next. If we made it out alive, how could we face him again? How could we live knowing what he was capable of? And yet, how could we stop being his parents? Love doesn't disappear just because it's wounded. It lingers, confusing and painful. This wasn't just about a fall or a moment of violence. It was about years of unspoken words, missed chances, and emotions left to rot in silence. It was about a family pushed to the edge, both literally and emotionally. And as the night loosened its grip, One truth became clear to me: surviving this meant facing a reality far more frightening than the darkness around us. Because if we stood up again, if we walked away from that place, nothing would ever be the same. And somewhere out there, our son was living with the belief that his secret was buried in the night. The question was whether the truth would stay buried or rise with us when the sun finally came up. The first movement came from my husband. It was slow and careful, like he was afraid the ground itself might betray us again. I felt his fingers loosen from mine, then return, a silent question. I didn't answer with words. I answered by breathing just a little deeper this time. The night was still there, but it no longer felt like it was pressing down on us. It felt like it was watching. We waited longer than we thought was necessary, because fear makes you doubt your own judgment. When we finally shifted our bodies, pain shot through me, sharp but manageable. It reminded me that I was alive, that whatever had happened, we were still here. My husband whispered my name, his voice shaking for the first time since this began. I whispered back, and in that exchange, we both understood how close we had come to losing everything. Standing up was harder than I imagined. The ground felt unfamiliar, unsteady, like it no longer trusted us either. I leaned into my husband, and he held me the way he used to during difficult times, solid and protective. For a moment, we didn't talk about our son. We couldn't. Saying his name felt too heavy, like it might pull us back down. As we looked around, the emptiness of the place became clear. No houses, no lights, just the road above us and the long stretch of silence below. We were far from help, and that realization brought a new kind of fear. Survival wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what came next. We had to decide whether to stay hidden or risk being seen. My mind kept returning to our son. Where was he now? Was he already home, sitting in his room, pretending nothing had happened? Or was he still out there, replaying the moment in his head the way I was? The thought of him carrying that secret terrified me almost as much as what he had done. Secrets grow in silence. They change people. As we slowly made our way to a safer spot, memories continued to surface. I remembered the last real conversation we had as a family, weeks before that night. We sat at the dinner table, food untouched, tension thick. He had accused us of not understanding him, of controlling his life. My husband had tried to explain that guidance wasn't the same as control. I had tried to keep the peace. No one truly listened. That argument ended without resolution, just like so many before it. We went to bed believing time would soften things. We believed love would be enough. Now, standing in the aftermath, I questioned everything. Were we blind, or were we simply parents hoping for the best? As dawn crept closer, we talked in hushed voices about what to do. Call for help? Go to the authorities? Pretend nothing happened and watch our son closely? Every option felt impossible. Reporting him meant losing him forever. Staying silent meant living with fear and guilt. There was no clear path forward, only shadows of consequences waiting for us. I tried to see things from his perspective, even though it hurt. I wondered what he felt in that moment. Was it rage? Fear? A desperate attempt to silence something he thought would destroy him? The thought that our own child might have believed this was his only option broke something inside me. It didn't excuse what he did, but it complicated everything. My husband's perspective was different. I could see it in his eyes. There was anger there, buried deep beneath shock and love. A father's heartbreak is quiet but powerful. He struggled with the idea that the boy he raised could choose such a path. He kept asking himself where he failed, what lesson he missed. I had no answers for him, only shared pain. As the sun finally began to rise, the world looked almost normal again. Birds stirred. The sky softened. It felt wrong that life could continue so easily after what we had experienced. That contrast made the situation even more unreal. We were carrying a secret heavier than anything we had ever known, while the world went on unaware. We knew one thing for certain: whatever came next would test us in ways we couldn't imagine. Our marriage, our identity as parents, our understanding of love and trust, all of it was about to change. The fall was only the beginning. The real struggle would be living with the truth and deciding whether to confront it or bury it deeper. As we slowly made our way forward, one thought echoed in my mind, louder than the rest. If our son believed we were gone, how would he live with that belief? And if he discovered we survived, what would he do to protect the story he had created? The answers waited somewhere ahead, unseen and unsettling, just beyond the reach of the rising light. The walk back felt longer than it should have been. Every step echoed with doubt, and every sound behind us made us pause. We avoided the main road at first, staying hidden, afraid of being seen too soon. My husband kept looking over his shoulder, not out of fear of strangers, but out of fear of familiarity. The idea of seeing our son again before we were ready made my chest tighten. As we moved closer to town, the weight of reality pressed down harder. We were no longer just survivors of a terrifying night. We were parents carrying a truth that could shatter everything. My phone was still in my pocket, silent and heavy. I hadn't checked it yet. Part of me was afraid of what I might see. Missed calls, messages, or worse, nothing at all. When I finally looked, my hands trembled. There were messages from neighbors, from relatives, all sent hours after we disappeared. Concern, confusion, fear. And then there was a message from our son, sent much later. It was short, too short, just a few words asking where we were. My heart sank. That message didn't sound like panic. It sounded like uncertainty. My husband read it over my shoulder, his jaw tightening. That was the moment I realized he had been hoping for something else. Hoping our son would show regret, fear, anything that suggested he hadn't meant it. That hope faded quietly between us. Not completely gone, but shaken. As we reached the edge of town, we had to make a choice. We could go straight home, walk into the life we left behind, or we could stay away a little longer and think. We chose the second option. Not because we didn't want to face the truth, but because we didn't know how. Every house we passed looked the same as before, and yet nothing felt familiar anymore. We found a quiet place to sit, hidden but close enough to see people moving about their day. Watching normal life continue felt surreal. People laughed, talked, checked their phones, unaware that a family nearby was breaking apart in silence. I wondered how many families carried secrets like ours, hidden behind closed doors and polite smiles. My mind kept replaying the moment before everything happened. I searched for a sign, a look, a hesitation that might explain it all. But the memory remained painfully unclear. That uncertainty became its own kind of torture. Not knowing whether this was planned or impulsive made it harder to understand what we were dealing with. As the hours passed, more messages came in. Questions about where we were, whether we were safe. Our son sent another message, this time asking us to call him. I stared at the screen, feeling torn. Calling him meant opening a door we couldn't easily close. Not calling him meant letting fear grow on both sides. My husband and I spoke quietly, carefully choosing our words. He worried that confronting our son too soon could push him further into denial or desperation. I worried that waiting too long would give him time to control the story, to shape the truth in a way that protected him and erased us. Every option felt dangerous. Then something happened that shifted everything. A neighbor called and said the police had been asking questions. Our disappearance had raised concerns. People were starting to look. The secret was no longer just ours. The walls were closing in, and time was running out. I felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that someone noticed we were gone. Fear of what would happen when questions reached our son. Would he panic? Would he lie? Or would he try to make sure we stayed silent for good? That thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cold. As evening approached again, the tension became unbearable. The same darkness that had nearly swallowed us once was returning. My husband squeezed my hand, and I could feel his resolve hardening. We couldn't hide forever. We couldn't protect everyone. A choice was coming, whether we were ready or not. Somewhere nearby, our son was waiting, believing something that wasn't true, or maybe fearing that it was. And soon, very soon, our paths would cross again. When that moment came, there would be no pretending, no silence to hide behind. The truth was rising, and none of us would walk away unchanged. The night returned faster than we expected, bringing with it a sense of urgency we could no longer ignore. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows that made every corner feel uncertain. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message from family or neighbors. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, already feeling that something had shifted. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. It was someone asking questions, careful ones, about when we were last seen and where we might be. They said they were trying to help. I gave vague answers, my heart racing as I spoke. When the call ended, my husband looked at me and said what I was already thinking. Things were moving faster now. Whatever our son believed, the outside world was closing in. We decided we couldn't stay hidden any longer. Not completely. We needed information. We needed to know what was being said about us, and more importantly, what our son was saying. So we did something that felt both brave and terrifying. We went closer to home without actually going inside. From a distance, our house looked the same. Lights were on. The curtains were drawn. Life was happening inside without us. That realization hurt more than I expected. We stood across the street, partially hidden, watching the place where we had built our family. And then we saw him. Our son stepped outside, phone pressed to his ear, pacing back and forth. His movements were tense, restless. He didn't look relieved or calm. He looked scared. That scared me too. Fear can push people to make dangerous choices. I wondered who he was talking to and what he was saying. We stayed still, afraid to be seen. I watched his face as he spoke, trying to read his emotions from afar. He ran a hand through his hair, the same habit he had as a teenager when he was overwhelmed. For a brief moment, I saw my child again, not the person who had pushed us away, but the boy who once needed us. Then his phone rang again, and everything changed. His posture stiffened. His voice dropped. He glanced up and down the street, scanning the darkness. My breath caught in my throat. It was like he sensed something, like he felt our presence without seeing us. The tension in that moment was unbearable. When he went back inside, my husband and I exchanged a look that said more than words ever could. This wasn't over. Not even close. Something else was happening, something we didn't yet understand. And whatever it was, our son was right in the middle of it. We moved away quietly, our minds racing. Questions piled up faster than we could answer them. Had he told someone what he did? Had he twisted the story? Or was he being questioned and struggling to keep his version together? The idea that he might be trying to protect himself at any cost made my stomach turn. As we walked, another thought crept in, one that hadn't occurred to me before. What if that night wasn't just about us? What if there was more he was trying to hide? The secrecy, the tension, the desperation in his voice all pointed to something deeper. That possibility raised the stakes in a way I wasn't prepared for. My husband voiced what I was afraid to say. If our son felt cornered, he might do something unpredictable. And if he believed we were a threat to whatever secret he was guarding, surviving the fall might not be the end of our danger. That realization changed everything. Later that night, another message came through. This one wasn't from our son. It was from someone we didn't recognize, asking to meet, saying they had information about what really happened. No details. Just a time and a place. My heart pounded as I read it. It felt like a trap, but it also felt like a missing piece. We sat in silence, weighing the risk. Meeting a stranger could make things worse. Ignoring it could leave us blind. Every decision now felt like it could tip the balance between truth and disaster. The story was no longer just about a family betrayal. It was becoming something larger, more dangerous. As the night deepened, I realized how fragile our situation truly was. We were alive but exposed. Our son was nearby, carrying his own version of the truth. And somewhere in the shadows, someone else knew more than they were saying. The calm before the climax was gone. What remained was a tight, suffocating tension, pulling all of us toward a moment that would change everything, whether we were ready or not. The place named in the message was quiet, almost too quiet. A small parking area near an old cafe that stayed open late. The kind of place people passed without noticing. My husband and I arrived early, our nerves stretched thin. Every car that slowed made my heart race. We were past the point of turning back. Whatever waited for us here held answers, and we were desperate for them. A man approached us just as the clock struck the time mentioned. He didn't look threatening, ordinary, even tired. He introduced himself softly and explained that he had been close to our son, closer than we ever knew. Not a friend in the way we understood friendship, but someone who had seen a side of him we hadn't. Someone who knew about the anger, the pressure, the mistakes. He told us our son had been spiraling for months, trapped between fear and desperation. Then came the words that shifted everything. He said that night wasn't supposed to end the way it did. Our son had brought us there to scare us into silence, to stop us from uncovering something he thought would ruin him. The push wasn't planned as an ending. It was panic. A moment where control slipped and fear took over. Hearing that didn't soften the betrayal, but it reframed it in a way that made my chest ache. Before we could ask more, headlights flashed across the lot. Police cars. The search had reached us. There was no more hiding, no more delay. We stepped forward, hands shaking, and told our story. Not just about the fall, but about the years of silence that led to it. Speaking the truth felt terrifying and freeing all at once. Our son was brought in shortly after. Seeing him again took the air from my lungs. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight he carried had finally become visible. When our eyes met, his face drained of color. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected us to be standing there, alive, breathing, looking back at him. The confrontation was quiet but devastating. No shouting. No excuses that could undo what was done. He broke down, admitting what happened, admitting the fear that drove him, admitting that he thought pretending we were gone would make everything else disappear. Watching him crumble was one of the hardest moments of my life. He was still our son, and he had also become the source of our deepest pain. The authorities handled what came next with care and seriousness. Consequences were unavoidable, but so was the truth. Our main conflict, the question of whether we would survive and be heard, was finally answered. We had survived, and our voices mattered. The secret he tried to bury had risen on its own. Just when we thought the story had reached its end, another truth surfaced. The man who contacted us revealed one last detail. The secret our son feared wasn't what we thought. It wasn't just about him. It involved someone else, someone who had been manipulating his fear, pushing him toward that moment of panic. Someone who disappeared the same night we did. That revelation landed like a final shock. The story wasn't as simple as a broken family. There were deeper threads still loose, questions still unanswered. As we left that night, the relief of survival mixed with the unsettling knowledge that not every shadow had been exposed. We walked away together, changed forever, knowing the truth had finally come into the light. But behind us, somewhere in the unanswered spaces, another story was waiting. And that was something none of us had seen coming. The days that followed felt unreal, like we were moving through someone else's life. Statements were taken, questions were asked, and silence filled the spaces in between. Our son was no longer just our child in those rooms. He was part of an investigation, part of a truth that could not be undone. Watching that separation form was painful, but it was also necessary. Some lines, once crossed, change everything. We returned home eventually. Walking through the front door felt heavier than the fall itself. Every object carried memory. The couch where we watched movies together. The kitchen table where arguments began and never truly ended. His room, quiet and untouched, felt like a paused moment in time. I stood there for a long while, realizing how easy it is to miss someone who is still alive. The unanswered questions slowly found their way into the open. We learned more about the person who had influenced our son, how fear had been planted and watered over time. It didn't excuse what happened, but it helped us understand how things had unraveled so badly. The mystery that once felt overwhelming began to take shape, piece by piece, until the full picture was impossible to ignore. Our son eventually spoke to us again, not as a confrontation, but as a confession. His words were heavy and uneven, filled with regret and shame. He talked about pressure, about feeling trapped, about believing there was no way out. Hearing him admit that he never truly wanted us gone broke my heart in a new way. Love and harm can exist in the same place, and that truth is terrifying. Healing didn't come quickly. Some nights I still wake up hearing the wind, feeling that moment replay in my mind. My husband carries it too, though he speaks of it less. We learned that survival isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's choosing to keep going even when trust feels fragile and forgiveness feels distant. As a family, we had to redefine what love meant. It no longer meant ignoring warning signs or staying silent to keep peace. It meant honesty, even when it hurt. It meant boundaries, accountability, and facing uncomfortable truths head-on. Those lessons didn't come easily, but they came with clarity. People often ask how we moved forward. The truth is, we didn't move on. We moved through. We accepted that what happened would always be part of our story, but it would not be the only part. Survival gave us a second chance, not to erase the past, but to learn from it. Looking back, I realize how powerful communication truly is. How silence can become dangerous when left unchecked. How fear grows when it isn't spoken aloud. If there is one takeaway from our story, it's this: listen before the distance becomes too wide. Ask questions before assumptions turn into resentment. Our son's journey continues, and so does ours. The path ahead is uncertain, but it is honest. And that honesty, no matter how painful, has become our foundation. We are still a family, changed but not destroyed, learning how to live with truth instead of hiding from it. This story isn't just about betrayal or survival. It's about how quickly life can shift and how strength sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. It's about the importance of facing reality, even when it threatens everything you thought you knew. If you take anything from this, let it be a reminder to look closer at the people you love, to speak when something feels wrong, to understand that silence doesn't protect us the way we think it does. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is face the truth before it pushes us to the edge. We survived the fall. But more importantly, we survived what came after. And that, in the end, is the story that matters most.